of the paradox of a scar. And today I want to bring you guys a fairy tale story about a scar. Not the kind of scar that heroes show after defeating a demon or earning on a battlefield. This scar appeared somewhere much less traumatic. In a classroom, with a girl. But before I tell you what really happened to that girl, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever let anyone define your limit? You don't need to answer this question to me right now. Just keep that memory in mind and welcome to the fairy tale world. Once upon a time, there was a little girl, and when that girl was in secondary school, sorry for my drawing because I'm trying to analyze what I'm gonna say. Her teacher told her that she had no chance of getting into any gifted high school in her city, not because she lacked effort or had terrible grades before, but simply because her teacher believed that she did not have the ability to do so, and also because at that time, no one from that school had ever made it into a gifted class, especially at her dream school. It wasn't just a judgment about herself. It sounded like a rule, and that rule somehow canceled the girl. She asked her teacher for a reason, but all she got back was just a dismissive look and a sentence, "That's it." Then, you know that the teacher believed that she would have been like realistic and helping the girl to understand her limits. But that kind of realism may do the opposite. And this is what really close to what describes in the Pygmalion effect. Expectations can shape performance. When people are trusted to grow, they are more likely to grow. And when they are treated as if they are limited, those limits can begin to feel real. And when you are young, authority does not sound like an opinion. It sounds like a truth. And because of that, the girl didn't protest. She just accepted it, and there were too many thoughts running across her head like, I shouldn't apply to this school. I will change my choice because my teacher said that I didn't good enough. I am not good enough. But why? And that is when her first scar formed, not on her body, but in her mind, after her teacher's belief became her own. Then things change. Every difficulties feel like proof that she wasn't good enough, and every hesitation feel to like confirm it. And that is when her second scar formed. And sorry, previous slide, please. After that, her dream of getting into a gifted high school was brought up in front of the whole class. And then the class laughed. One boy in that class said that, I don't know if you are being delusional or just overconfident about yourself. I think it wasn't said in anger, but sometimes the simplest thing leave the deepest mark. And the girl stood there, unsure if she should like defend herself or act like it didn't matter. And then things changed. She, without realizing it, she started to expect less about herself. And that is when her third scar formed. That is when she started to hold herself back. And as you may have guessed, that little girl was me. You can see that this is the picture when I wore my secondary school uniform. Went to Phổ thông Năng Khiếu High School for the Gifted when I just got the announcement that I got into the literature gifted class. And that is the picture when I wore my high school uniform back to my secondary school to show for everyone and prove that I can do everything that they said to be impossible. As you can see that there was no traumatic scene, but what I remember the most was the tranquility afterward. I sat on my desk, staring at my workbook and feeling my cheeks growing hot with disappointment. I think it was an unusual mixture of sadness, embarrassment, and a sudden feeling of smallness. And that's how many scar forms. One moment, one interpretation, and one conclusion. That's it. But what makes a scar really painful is not about how it begins. It is also about what happens afterward. Some scars, they are healed because you are giving them time, care, and patience. But some other scars, they become deeper and even worse because people in this society keep pressing on them, repeating them, and refusing to let them change into any better form. And this is exactly the reason why I keep returning to the image of a scar. A scar helped me to realize that damage and adaptation can happen at the same time. And because of that, when our body is hurt, it doesn't erase the wound. Instead, our body responds to it. Then tissue forms, cells reorganize, and a scar forms. The scar may not identical to the skin that existed before. It may be tougher, less flexible, and looks different. But it's there because your body has time to heal. I think that some of the scar, happen because I think that in my case, I think that I don't think that it was just a story about personal confidence, but it is also a story about what like judgment works in the society. Next slide, please. And in my case, our mind can do something similar because, but not in always the healthy way. When our body, when some judgment about ourselves and we believe them, the scar stops being a sign of survival and starts becoming a place where we are trapped. For example, when people said that we are not good enough, we have a tendency to stop before we even truly fail. And each time we repeat that thought, our scar become deeper and the scar become the limitation. Not because our bodies were hurt, but because we allow that scar, allow that hurt to shape our identity. In my case, a scar may come from a judgment that I did not really deserve, right? But in other cases, a scar may come from a real mistake, a careless sentence, or harm that someone has caused. But I think the question is similar, that do we give people the chance to heal a scar, or do we keep pressing on their wound until it becomes their whole identity? And once I saw that the story become bigger than one classroom, it is no longer a story about how personal scars are formed. It gradually becomes how judgment works in our society. And this is exactly the reason why the scar remind me of the cancel culture. Now, before I criticize cancel culture, I wanted to explain itself. Cancel culture does not come from nowhere. It exists because harm is real, because somebody lie, abuse power, exploit others, and refuse to change. In those cases, calling out wrongdoing may protect the communities, warn others, and name harm that might otherwise be ignored. So the problem is not criticism itself, right? The problem is what criticism is trying to do. Does it help people to take responsibility and change, or only punish people inside their scars and permanently treat it as their whole identity? And as you can see, those are stages of wound healing in our body. And this is where the scar matters again. In this body, you can see that it is step by step, and a scar is considered as like an important part of process. But in life, we usually don't treat scars like our body does. Instead of seeing them as part of a process, we treated them as the end. We take one moment, one test result, or one mistake of a person to define their whole identity and limitation. That's it. Identity decided. Case closed. It may feel efficient, clear, and fair when we trust things like that. But I do agree that accountability and harm still matters. But people, cannot differentiate accountability and cancellation. Accountability means that facing what happened, making amends, and continuing the work of changing. However, cancellation removes the step of healing and repair. It keeps pointing at the scar until it is never forgotten. Accountability says what you did was wrong and you need to make it right. However, cancellation said, because you did wrong and this mistake will define who you are and you must remain responsible for your mistake forever. But not everyone belongs in the same category. There are people who refuse to change, to take responsibility, and to feel remorse. Those need to be called out, right? But there are also people that are ashamed, reflective, and willing to move forward, but they are swallowed by the same machinery of judgment. And my point is not that everyone will change. My point is that not everyone will the same. So the society that treats every scar as proof that someone is beyond repair may become cruel, and cancellation may somehow harmful. I think that part of the reason we do this is how our minds work. Our brains try to simplify things, and when there's too much information to analyze, it creates shortcuts. And in a world that focuses on grades, rankings, or comparisons, those shortcuts get even shorter. I think that this does not only appear with celebrities or on social media only. It can happen somewhere simple, like in a classroom that I once share with you about my story. And a student failed one test. Then they immediately named as a weak student. Or a person make only one mistake, and this society define them as the problem of the society forever, for the rest of their life. And once those labels repeated often enough, the scar is not only a part of growth, it becomes a verdict and the name that people in this society use for a person. Have you ever heard the song, Romeo takes me somewhere we could be alone. I've been waiting for you, but you never come. You heard it right? A singer of that song is Taylor Swift. And raise your hand if you know Taylor Swift, please. Okay. So let me explain why I mentioned her here. In 2016, Taylor became the center of the massive online backlash after the song Famous of Kanye West released, with sexual explicit lyrics about her. Taylor said that she hadn't approved any of those lyrics, but someone later said that and shared video clips about phone calls that made it seem like Taylor had fully agreed to them. And then she was mocked, attacked online, and named like this, like a snake. Really common in this society, right? Years later, she once said that she thought that those nicknames would define her identity for the rest of her life. But fortunately, it didn't, because she's so talented and her songs are amazing. I think so. So the point is not that every public figure is innocent. I won't say that Taylor is innocent. But the point is that a bad moment can be so loud that everyone stops paying attention to anything else. And if we let cancellation freezes people inside their scars, I think that we just accepting that human beings are creatures that can never change for the better. But I think we can, right? If we cannot, I'm still a timid girl, letting others believe, setting her limitations. And, everyone around us is still forming, growing, and adapting. But, like cancellations remove the patience that a person needs when they um, move past a mistake or heal a scar or when they adapting. And cancellation in this society let people say with confidence, that's it. But what if it isn't? For a long time, I thought that surviving a scar meant hiding it. But slowly, I learned that I don't need to remove a bad moment in order to outgrow it. Then I let myself try. Next slide, please. Then I let myself try. Even when I felt ridiculous, I let myself want many things that people said that to be impossible, even when I felt unqualified. I did not become fearless all at once. The scar didn't disappear, of course. But I think that it stopped controlling myself. So if you're carrying a mark of a difficult moment, please remember that one bad moment is only one chapter, not the whole book of your life. You are more than your scar, and what others usually call delusion may become a big courage for you to believe in a bigger and a better future. So don't rush. Don't be afraid of scars. When writing your book, you still have time. And I hope you have a nice Tuesday. Thank you.